Thank you so much, Neville Poulton. Thank you for agreeing to be part of this podcast. You're my third person interviewer, so I'm really grateful for this opportunity to speak to you about the space industry, because that's your background, and also just talk about your journey and how you started, but also the bigger schemes of the space industry and what you did itself and what you're seeing is happening. So looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly of that industry, but also how we can move it forward to the next level. The reason why this podcast has been set up is basically to raise awareness, to educate the public, to change people's perception of how they perceive the STEM world as so, but also to challenge us that are within the industry as to how we see things. Getting the industry, getting the education system, getting the media, because I think communicating what we do is so important. So who's talking on our behalf? Is it the people who really know what we're doing, or is it just people randomly saying, oh, I think I've got the right skill, I can communicate, but really you don't really understand what I'm doing. So it's about changing, getting people to raising that
perceptions.
Exactly. And also challenge us in the industry, because one of the things that I have noticed that we complain about not having enough skill set, or there's a deficit in the skills in the UK. But you know, and then we go outside and then we complain, oh, we've got too many people from outside. But what are we doing to change that? So really, this is to open a conversation. This is to get people to start thinking in a different way. So moving from what the negatives are to what are the positives that we can do.
Good.
So I'm going to just let the floor open, and please talk, and just feel free. Again, this is just us having a conversation. It's not about trying to be polished. It's just being true and authentic to what we believe is
super great.
So it's your floor now, Neville, please.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my journey started when I was a young boy. Before I left home, when my mum and dad gave me a Meccano set, and I regard engineering, any type of engineering, as a vocation, and that vocation flowered in me from the time they gave me that Meccano set, because it not only taught me about nuts and threads and screwing things together, it taught me about how and why. And I began to realize that that's the way my brain learns how and why. If I don't answer those questions, then I find it a little bit less rewarding. So to put that in today's terms, if everyone, it seems, has a mobile phone, but not everyone understands how and why. Why it gets warm, how and why they've lost coverage. Most people probably put down their phone and get another one when it doesn't work. And it's that inbuilt, I've written down here, engineering as a vocation, rather than just a career that you climb a ladder with. Because you know, Margaret, and I know, that most engineers, if you only follow engineering for financial reward, you will never be a millionaire as an engineer by itself. So it's not about initially money. It's about finding what you're on this earth for, and what skills you have within you. And that's how I started. And then I had the good fortune to take on what is now known as a golden apprenticeship. And these are hard to find, but extremely rewarding. And they usually involve at least 5 years of training, not 3. And they involve at least one of those years working, let's say work experience is known as today, but it's more than that. It's working to a program of learning at the place where you think you would most enjoy. So I happened to be in the Royal Navy at that time, But you can't serve, well, you can serve as an apprentice these days, but it's not a golden apprenticeship in the same sense. There are very few and far between. So my grandson, for example, turned around to me the other day when we were had a drink with my son, his father, down the pub, and he said, I like woodwork. And I said, oh, do you? He's 15. And so I said, we talked about what like working with wood is like, and what tools you might need. But the question really is, where is he going to find a golden apprenticeship that would give him the maximum exposure to the techniques of working with wood, but also today's technology in terms of carbon fiber and other materials, and how to work them, but how to take himself into the real world from that. And there is one apprenticeship here in Portsmouth, in the Naval Dockyard, that is the golden apprenticeship for those who want to be in the woodworking industry. And there's a boathouse that is 17th century, and inside it's a floating dockyard, and all the ship's boats that our warships carry are maintained there. And it smells of wood, it smells of paint, and you go in there, and they offer to 4 or 5 people each year an international apprenticeship where you sail in one of those years with a civilian training ship, but actually you woodwork. And you work, and in fact, I actually found for him one warship that we have at sea with a wood workshop on it. So it's those kind of things that I'm talking about, and that led me to realize I had a particular interest in electronics. And later on in life, the reason I mention golden apprenticeships is of course because what they lead to is an automatic profession, and usually it means that a degree level of qualification is available and it's funded, but usually by that company.
Okay. When you say golden apprenticeship, sorry, it seemed, can you just expand on that? Because I think that's quite important. And also, you talked about your grandson going to woodwork and the fact that you found it. How did you find that? Because I think sometimes we say, this is available. We don't know where to go to find it. So can you just expand on that?
Well, that's where I came in, really, because he didn't know either. I asked him the question, how are you going, Dexter? And he said, oh, I'm interested in woodwork. But I don't think his mind had turned to, how am I going to become skilled in it? What tools do I need? And I don't just mean woodworking tools. I mean, how do I find somewhere where I can learn all the techniques and skills, but I've got to remain at school, haven't I, at college? And I mean by golden apprenticeship, a apprenticeship that's properly funded and isn't just parking you by someone and say, there you are, this is the job, if you follow me and you'll be all right. It's about properly funded machine shops. It's properly funded technical expertise at higher level college. It's about continuing your basic education at the same time. It's about understanding the broad-based subjects which can launch you into your career later on, even if it's not the one you thought you were going to want to do. So I meet so many. When I was at my schools in STEM, just before I retired, I met so many young people who, at the age of 17, were trying to do a too high a level A level. So they were trying to do astronomy at A level. Now you can do that, but astronomy is no use as an A level if, in fact, when you're 25, you find yourself not interested in astronomy anymore. It's the core subjects, in other words: geography, history, physics, double physics. In the case of engineers, chemistry. So it's science, and it's keeping you based in that so that you can launch yourself into civil engineering, marine engineering, because what's for sure is most people's journey when they're 35 is they tend to say, well, actually, I've got this other interest over here. And if they haven't got the basis, then it's more difficult for them to launch themselves or be of use to the whole country, and or industry as a whole, or take a profession, unless, of course, you're just interested in academia. I don't think I'm touching on academia. And I've done my academia, but I use it in my profession. So I learn, and then and that's where I'm at. So I then, after my first decade of electronic engineering, systems engineering, I went back to university. And when I got to master's level, I then chose to do my spacecraft engineering modules for a whole year.
Wow.
But I wouldn't have, if I went back, I would still do it that way. I wouldn't go back and say, let's just do my spacecraft engineering at school. Too early.
Right.
I didn't know when I was 35, when I was 30, that I was going to end up with another 30 years of spacecraft engineering.
Wow. Do you know, thank you so much. But you know what you touched on was that, when we go through the education path, we're sort of, we have to do it a certain way. But what you have actually brought up is that, hold on, you weren't even aware, even though you went through a process with this apprenticeship, the golden apprenticeship,
yes.
You did it for 5 years. It was in electronics. And
yes.
you had a diverse background, not just the hands-on practical experience, but also the education
yes.
side. But at that time, you still weren't fully aware what path would really work for you. And I think this is where young people are struggling as well, because they
yes.
are going through a process that they
yes.
expect, because this is what the system says you should do, or this is what our parents say, or this is what other people are doing. So we do that, but we realize down the line that, oh, okay. Really, and then I don't really want to do this. I'm doing it because it's been said I should do it. But really, how do I?
Absolutely.
And so how did you, and this is one of the things that we need to bring up and raise, that, hold on a minute, it doesn't have to be that way all the time. Look, and how do we bring all the options available? How do we make them aware of that? Because from your point of view, I think for you to have gone to that space engineering, there must have been something that triggered it off. So this is where I want to do it, or how I want to do it.
Yes, it did. So the transfer, it's like a transfer of technology in some ways. The transfer of radar system engineering, which was what I was doing when I left the Navy when I was 30, into what I now know as the highest skill level of engineering that you could do in electronics, which is in the spacecraft world. And most other industries learn from the extremely high discipline levels that we have to work to in spacecraft engineering, come from spacecraft engineering itself. So if you go down a level, you get into aeronautical engineering, but the parameters at which you're operating are, an aircraft can have its problems, but you can get it back on the ground. A spacecraft, you cannot get it back on the ground. It has to work properly 100% of the time for the whole of the mission lifetime. And that is what you're working towards. So your understanding of structural engineering, of electrical and electronic engineering, thermal engineering, antenna engineering are driven by the fact that the concepts you're dealing with have to turn into a reality which works without failure.
Okay.
And that's a big challenge.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Can we just go back a bit?
Yeah.
You talked about you being in the Royal Navy. That seems to be like a very good platform for you, because really you were open to a different way of doing things.
Yes, indeed.
Not everyone has the opportunity to go into that, but can you just give, because people may even consider another way to go, because people go into the army, or I don't know if the training is different, or there's something they're open to a different way of doing things. I don't know, but maybe you can expand on your training while you were in the Royal Navy. I know you left when you were 30, but
Yes. So it's interesting, really, because again, my two grandsons now Franklin is 10 and he wants to be a Royal Marine Commando. And he is a Royal Marine Cadet right now. Dexter wants to do his woodwork, we think. So you have one person who might be choosing to go and get a skill set as an apprentice, and you have the other one who wants to do the physical training because and again, I've met this when I was an apprentice in the Royal Navy, because we spent a lot of our sports days with the Royal Marines, and they learn a very, very physical non-apprenticeship, but a physical training that's all about landing on beaches and all that brings with it. Royal Marine Commandos are very, very, very disciplined and very driven towards being in the front line.
Okay.
Myself, in the Navy, yes, I served half my 12 years from the age of 18 at sea, in the front line, but I was always engineering, always keeping these antennas going around, always making sure the ops room was actually at the peak of its performance, always with the radar transmitters at the peak of their tuning, etc. So there are different ways of serving in that sense, and there are different ways of beginning to develop. Now, Franklin might not end up as a Royal. Dexter may well not be a woodwork craftsman. He might end up in Formula One, shaping carbon fiber, designing the aeronautics of, keeping a Formula One car on the ground rather than flying, for example.
And I think
so.
Sorry. I was just going to say, this is the whole thing where STEM or engineering is concerned. You can work in different industry. And I think one of the things that is not very clear, and I think when young people or parents or guardians are looking to make some decision concerning the educational path or career path for their family or for the young ones, they're not even sure where they'll fit in a bigger scheme of things, or what opportunities are available if they were going to go through that path. But I think from your perspective, because you've been in that industry for a very long time, you know what's available, what opportunities can be. And I think your grandsons are going to benefit from having parents or grandparents who've actually been there and done that on the t-shirt. And I think that makes such a huge difference. Because when you have someone who already is aware of what's around and what's available, what type of industry can work, and what type of skill sets are required, then you're able to guide them in a positive way and show them the different and show them what different opportunities can be available to them if they decide to go on that path. So, for example, your young son going to woodwork, to the other one going to Royal Navy or Royal Marines and doing the things in a different way. But that doesn't mean their paths are not any different. It's just someone's going on a different route, which they feel comfortable. They know what they can, they love to do. I think it's so different. I think that's the dynamics about people. We approach life in different ways, and I think we need to respect that and enable that and nurture that as well, so that we can achieve the highest standard.
I mean, there are two things I'd say, Margaret. One is Franklin, who is a Royal Marine guy. He's 10, nearly 11. Already in a year and a half, he's been a Royal Marine Cadet. He has changed from, I want to do this really badly, and being energized in a different way. Doesn't play football like Dexter. He does keep fit. He's coming back now to the fact that he knows that physical fitness is a key part of being in a Royal Marine career, but it won't last him much longer than he's 30 in terms of physical fitness. So he's already aware and met the fact that he needs another skill set to take him on after that. Dexter has found that in the same way, but not in the same way. So he has played football and started off by wanting to be, a Premier League footballer, to realizing how difficult that is, and now is saying, I'm interested in woodwork. See the about turn.
Yes.
I was just going to say the other golden apprenticeship now that I'm aware of. There are not many, but one of them. So already one of them is at this boatyard in the dockyard, and another one is what's available in the space industry. So the space industry, when I left it, had a flagship apprenticeship. It was just the time when the government was becoming aware that apprenticeships are really a key part of the skills that the country needs. But the disciplines that you work with in the space industry, even as an apprentice, are that much more detailed, that much more special. They are specialized, but that much more at a higher level. So, for example, even when you're doing work experience and in your third year out of 4 or second year out of 3, everything is written down professionally in your journal. So everything comes to be checked and double checked by your peers, because you cannot make a mistake as a spacecraft engineer. Yeah. Because I actually have written down in my little notes here, structural engineering is a key example. All things we know in life have a structure, and I mean a physical structure. So when a spacecraft needs a metal structure to hold together all the pieces that make the James Webb telescope, for example, so special. Mm-hmm. But on the ground, it's got mass as well as weight. Mm-hmm. So, and this structure has to hold the spacecraft together when an almighty shock happens and a rocket launch takes place. Mm-hmm. As soon as it's out of gravity, it's got a lovely life, mm-hmm. because there's no shocks anymore in that sense. Indeed. You see. But in what it's got to do is keep the spacecraft cool. Mm. So we've got structural engineering and thermal engineering. Mm. Indeed. You see. Yes. So there are different ways. I mean, talking about the elephant in the room, I haven't actually mentioned it, is this is going back a little bit, what I did meet in these 22 schools is I met parent after parent after parent who, because as soon as you get these golden apprenticeships, you meet more people who are aspiring rather than retiring. Mm-hmm. So they're aspiring to go to the next level. Mm-hmm. And you meet the parents who push their children. Mm-hmm. And what they want is medics, I don't call them doctors, because most of them are not doctors by education. They have a master's degree and then they're chartered. Mm-hmm. So they're medics, just like other professions that are chartered, accountants, for example, and they want them to be medics or lawyers, but they don't say engineering. That's because in this country, as a history, there's a mindset change, and I think that's the elephant in our room. The mindset change with it's the teachers as well. You see, the teachers don't know about engineering.
Yeah, very true.
They know about physics, but they don't know what applies in physics that you use in engineering. Yeah. And so they didn't. They went. I could see their eye contact changing when you say engineering. Mm.
And I think this is the reason why we need to be able to educate the education system as to what it entails. And we need people who do know what the expertise, those who've worked in the industry, like yourself, Neville. Because one of the things that we are struggling with our education system is that I think the education system it's very traditional, if that makes sense. And so, you talked about apprenticeship. Actually, I spoke to somebody who is a coordinator where apprenticeship is concerned, and this is a big struggle. There was this disparity between the apprenticeship and the traditional education system, and we don't seem to marry, we don't seem to be able to talk to one another. And how do we change that? But that's another story together, and I don't want to go into because really I want to talk about your industry itself and looking at what you have achieved in that industry and what you
Yes.
believe is the good, the bad, and the ugly within your industry, and how do you encourage more young people to get in? I love the fact that you started as an apprenticeship. I also love the fact that you started, you went into the Royal Navy, because not many, if people know how the different options, it gives them a wider way of thinking, and not just like,
yes,
this is the only way, but actually there are different options
yes.
that are available to me. And then
Yeah.
hopefully have, based on that information, they can make informed decisions in
Yes.
where the parents are concerned, where the public is concerned. It raises awareness, it educates them, and then help them to look at the best ways for their young children to make decisions about what career path, what education system they should follow through as well. So that's what I want you to bring up as well from your end.
Yeah.
But also, you never mentioned before we continue, is that you didn't tell us what exactly you did within the space industry. I know you said you did a space industry,
yes. So,
but it's quite nice for them to know what you did. What you did as well for 33 years.
Okay. So, in the last 5 years of being in the Navy, so from when I'm 25 to 30, I began to really cotton on to the fact that this apprenticeship I had would lead me to a degree level training whilst I was in the Navy if I wanted to. And what's more, the Navy would pay. The same way as for those who do well in the space industry as an apprentice, most companies, I know EADS, Airbus, which is the whole of the UK space industry as a whole now, not totally, but is largely, in terms of engineering, it is. It leads to degree level education, and so but they fund it within the company, so you don't have to get yourself into debt, is what I'm saying, to do your degree level training. And so I was at Open University, and then at Bath, Southampton, Kiel, at university over a period of about 4 or 5 years, including when I left the Navy. Okay, so I left the Navy not with a master's, and it was with a basic level degree, so a BSc, when I was 30. And once I transferred, I was lucky, because the other thing is, of course, unemployment was unheard of a little bit then, and I ended up with 6 jobs when I left the Navy, and I could choose which one I wanted, you see.
Yeah.
And so I chose one where I could begin to understand. They wanted my disciplinary skills I learned in the Navy and professional skills, and I needed to understand where that would take me. And after about 2 years, I realized that this company makes spacecraft, design spacecraft, and I could see by the level of engineering professionalism that I met in the teams when I went into the spacecraft clean room, I understood that these guys were really high level, really skilled, really motivated, really rewarding job, able to think sideways and do a different kind of jobs, if careers, if you so choose. And so I then, when I was about 32, was when I did my master's in spacecraft engineering. And in fact, at that time, industry itself had invented the master's degree in this country and persuaded the universities to take it on at master's level rather than at basic degree level. So that, I think you can do a master's, I'm pretty sure you can. You can do a spacecraft engineering degree now if you wanted to. But the point is that in spacecraft engineering, you need physicists. You need materials. In technology terms, you need material scientists. And I can explain that away as a wonderful, challenging place to be, because every single material, and there are thousands of them on a spacecraft, has to be space qualified. Nothing can go on the spacecraft unless the materials are space qualified. And this is where your material engineers come in. They look at the basic materials. They have to test these materials, how the material chemically changes over a mission lifetime in space of 20 years, let's say. And where does that come from? It comes from launching spacecrafts where people died in 1960 because the engineers hadn't thought about what happens to copper pure copper in electric wires, in wiring, when you get in space. And of course, they grow whiskers of copper oxide, and they had short circuits and a fire. And of course, they were breathing pure oxygen. And those guys died because we didn't understand, we, the world, hadn't got it in terms of way we thought, what happens to a material when it's in a vacuum.
Indeed.
Okay. And so that's the level. That's why we've got these disciplines, because human life depends on it. If you work in the space industry, in human transport to Mars, so it's got you could even go get diversified into human physiology if you wanted to. It leads to every kind of field.
What exactly did you do within that industry? Because it's quite nice to get a feel of you.
Okay.
Because it's great to know about what opportunities are there, but quite nice to know what you did.
So what I brought with me was my electronic systems, radar systems engineering into the spacecraft industry, and so I had a skill of understanding what antennas do and how they work. And what RF systems, how you put together an end-to-end RF system to receive an RF signal and pass it down to the ground. And I can talk to you about Sky TV till the cows come home now. I've got a Model 1 up there that somebody gave me when I retired, and it's a model spacecraft, and on it are the antennas which transmit Sky TV from the football match in Europe to Goonhilly to the UK. So so that's the skill I brought, and I began to use that in terms of my engineer, but I hadn't met the engineering standards, the disciplined engineer from top to bottom engineering standards that allow you to take an RF design and what's more, begin to sell it to significant customers around the world. Because when you're talking about a spacecraft, they're not like a bicycle. They are very, very sophisticated. And with no insult to a bicycle, they're a little bit more difficult to sell. And so the average value of a spacecraft today would be in the region of 500 million. So if you're going to provide global communications around the globe, for example, you need one at 120 degrees apart. You need three to cover the Earth, 120 degrees apart. So you're talking about 1.5 billion for global coverage. Just the spacecraft by itself before you control them on the ground, which is key to the whole thing, and before you've got the ground stations to receive the signals, the football match. How do they get from one place to the other? And these tiny mobile phones, how do you communicate, as you can these days, to a spacecraft, and you can hear the signal as a voice or a picture on your phone? How does that actually happen?
Yeah, indeed. So your specialism was then using your background in electronics to come
RF
in
systems
and systems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so basically your with your company itself, you specialize in that.
Yes.
Or your expertise was in that.
Yes.
So if, for example, someone was decided they're thinking of going to the space industry based on our conversation today, that wow, I like what Neville's doing, I want to be that part of it. So what would you say? Because one of the things I would like to do is not just say it's all perfect, but what are the good, the bad, and the ugly of that industry, and what can and then if someone was looking to considering going into the space industry, how would you sell it to them?
Yes. How would I sell it to them? Well, the first thing is what is in your mind in terms of when you engage with something technical like RF systems. Is it in your mind that you want to continue to be engaged as a profession with RF systems? And if the answer is yes, then you have to say, well, how do I remain at the forefront of technology? And
that's
the
important.
good side, yes. How do I continually? And it's not just about being a chartered engineer. It's about how do I remain at the very forefront of how you design an antenna? How do I design a world class RF system end to end? How do I do that? Where do I learn how to do that? And there's only one or two answers as to remain at the forefront of technology in this country. That's the good side. The probably the most significant bad and ugly side is because of the disciplined professionalism, everything moves slowly because you cannot make a mistake. So you have to, if you come into a team of spacecraft system engineers who are working at the highest level, you will probably find that most of them came in with a master's degree in spacecraft engineering, having done 4 or 5 years before that at BSc level. And they come in and they see this weird looking spacecraft in the clean room and say, oh, I love this, I want to get involved with that. And the next thing if you sign on the dotted line, sign up for it and say, yeah, I want to do this, you then have to go back down to equipment level, to component level, and again go back to your physics and learn how to apply your physics to the most simple level components that come out of the technology of this material science piece. Indeed. And how do I put so you have to, as an RF systems person, I mentioned physics. So a physicist is quite an important part for us in RF systems, because it's the physicists who have a grip on the laws of physics of what's possible and not possible. Because when you get to RF system level, at the top level, you are probably working in advanced systems, like I was at a business level, and you're wanting to sell something that's worth mega millions, that provides a complete return on their investment. Of course. And the only way you can do that is by offering them something that is not just at world-class level, but even a little bit further out. Okay. And the only way you can do that is have a handle on the basic laws of physics, what's possible and what's nearly possible. It's a bit like medical, the medical guys in COVID. They were at the level that if you have listened to these people who designed AstraZeneca, the lady who actually ran that, she was always at the forefront of what she was an expert at. Of course, and I think that's very important. And that means that as an individual, need to go out your way to explore and find out what's going on, and be aware of what's trending, what's happening. And also, I think it's about sharing of knowledge as well, and know where to go. But from a young person's perspective, do we get opportunities for a taster within the industry? Because it's very specialist. And you need to have a certain skill set. You talk about physics, about understanding physics, what the law of physics. But then again, unless you can see the hands-on and practical side of something, you can't visualize how that would merit. And how do you get a taste? Yeah. I don't think I would have been a professional engineer in spacecraft systems engineering if I hadn't have had a golden apprenticeship, where for a whole year I was shown around these fantastic systems that we were using to track aeroplanes coming at us who were threatening to throw a bomb at us. Yeah. Well, you were in the Royal Navy, though. Not everyone has the opportunity to go to to join. So and that's why. Yeah. What I think I'm saying is, at the highest level, and even at a normal level, if you want a rewarding career, you've got to have a system with your mum and dad and your granddad of saying, what's the actual ultimate in terms of what I would find rewarding? What is it? What can I see? And the answer is, if you want to do woodwork, go to that dockyard and you will see these fantastic wooden craft sailing in the water there and then. You can smell it, see it, and say, Yeah, I'd like to do that. And yes, I'd like to do it in the Caribbean, because I can then do cabinet designing in a luxury yacht. Yes, I want to do that.
But that's an ideal world, though. But not everyone has a grandparent or parents or a guidance that actually have a background who knows where to go. Most Joe Public
don't know where to go.
Don't even know what it entails to be an engineer or scientist, or technologist, or even in the maths.
Yeah,
so
it's difficult.
How do we
know? So
how to raise that? Because we need to. It's about raising awareness on what are things.
Yes.
And this actually leads on to the practical solution, because I think you've said some really great things, but I think if we're talking to the Joe public, if we're talking to the public, and because the majority of people are not even aware, because you even spoke about in the education system, they don't understand the engineering side of things. They just know that, these subjects, but they don't know how the correlation between those two. So if we're talking about the education system that should know, it's going to be more harder for the Joe public to actually get their heads around that.
So, So I think the only way I know actually that does work is what worked for me.
Yeah, of course.
So I went from putting pieces of metal together with nuts and bolts to making little construction kits. And that's when I began to realize that I was interested in engineering. So just let me get something a minute.
Okay.
Off screen.
Yes.
Now then. So just in the last year or two, especially stuck down in COVID, I went back to basics. Here is my Spitfire.
Wow.
And it's made of tissue paper.
Did you make it?
Yeah. Tissue paper and balsa wood.
Wow.
It's actually modeled on someone who flew in the Battle of Britain with this particular one.
Yeah. Wow.
So what I'm saying is I've kept in touch a little bit with my hands-on, able to shape. So the wings are shaped properly. It's all there.
Yeah.
How do you do that unless you're wanting to be a craftsperson as well? In other words, an artisan, as well as remaining in touch with academia, taking yourself on another level.
Indeed.
So I think as a normal person, you've got to, it's like Dexter, you see, my grandson, he said, I'm interested in woodwork. Well, the first thing that he would have to do is on his first contact in something like the dockyard is say, what have you made? I've got a desk blotter here somewhere, can't think where it is now. It's my only woodworking when I was at 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So he needs to take something and say, my hands did that. That's what my interest is.
Yeah, but you know, Neville.
Read a book.
Well, Neville.
You've got to know a little bit about aeronautics.
Sit down.
Okay.
Quick.
I'm sorry. I've got a Spitfire here.
Yeah, but the thing is, you speak with passion because it's what you love to do. But you didn't get to that conclusion in the early years of your and that's the thing with young people. They don't get to that conclusion. So later on in life, this is really what even Dexter. He's a prime example. He wanted to be a footballer, and he realized a professional footballer. But he realized you're getting off the screen. If you sit back a bit. Sit.
Sorry. I was looking at you.
You're looking at me. Okay.
That's right.
Dexter, he had to go through a process to get to that conclusion.
Yes. And I think that was hard, Margaret.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing with young people as well. They go through the education system. Some of them leave without any form of qualification. It's easy for us to say, they're lazy, this and that, but they're struggling with what they want to do. Does that make sense? But can we catch them before they get to that stage? And that's the
absolutely.
thing. This is what I'm trying to get out of you. But
Yes.
don't ever. It doesn't. Even though
Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from. I can see your passion. But not
Yeah.
everyone has a grandfather
No.
or parents
Yeah.
who can encourage them. Some people.
Well, I think what I'm saying there is it's harder for boys actually than girls, because girls tend to know earlier in their life what they want to do, whereas boys have these dreams like, I want to be a professional footballer. So he has every encouragement from his mum and dad until he realizes actually that being a Premier League footballer, is the chances are thousands to one against ever making it at that level, because it's so exceptional and everything has to be funded by your mum and dad. Okay. You see, so the first thing I'd say is it's very important for mum and dad to encourage their children at a very early age to do different things, not just one thing. So I had very fortunately, being a young person in the Navy, I had a professional squash trainer who took me on at his trouble and his expense to a level above the normal level of squash, playing squash, where I was floundering. I saw something in me. In other words, I got spotted a little bit, and he took me on to another level. So I learned how to play squash, totally different from making these. Okay. So the key thing, I think, is for young people to choose a golden apprenticeship somewhere, something like a golden apprenticeship that will take you over so many different fields. The naval apprenticeship, my golden apprenticeship, I spent the first year with 250 others who were going to be mechanical engineers, we're going to be construction engineers, we're going to be physicists, we're going to be draftsmen, going to be computer-aided design technicians, the whole mega range of disciplines before I became specialized when I was 19. Okay, so I had 3 years in this 5-year apprenticeship when I could have chosen what I wanted to do. And very fortunately, they had a meritocracy in the Navy, and I achieved the results I needed to go in my choice of profession, which was RF engineering, at the age of 18 and a half. Now, so it's very important that if you, before that, at 10 to 15, that mum and dad make sure that their children have a broad experience, so they can be, especially boys, who can say, actually, I'm not going to make it at that, but I fancy that as well. This is what Dexter's done. He said, well, actually, I'm not going to make it at that, but I'm interested in that, and he needs another one. He almost certainly will need something else to help him launch into, and he might not end up with any of those, but he'll find his own skill.
That's an ideal world.
It's vocation. That's why it's vocation.
Yeah, indeed. But if you think about it, most young people may not have the luxury of having parents who have the time or give them the opportunity to try different things.
Yes.
Most the dynamics of today is based on, it's a different kind of family system as well. Yes. And also the nature of work and what has been happening. So we don't have, I'm just saying, looking at the bigger scheme of things, that not everyone will have that luxury. I call it luxury because not many people have that opportunity, or have a parent who's patient enough to allow them to explore and do the things. They just say, do this, or follow the system, because they don't know any different. So
what ran through my mind, Margaret, was at the same time, was when you have fun, what do you do? And some people, and I know I used to love racing electric racing cars. And I was particularly good at that kind of thing, because it was hands-on with control buttons. But the competitiveness. How competitive do you have? Does this girl, does this boy have a competitive streak? Are they driven?
I think everyone is driven to a point, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
And I think we can't say
but there's got to be a light somewhere.
And I think maybe, but then how do you get to that point of passion or light for you to be? Because again, we're saying that the young people are getting to a stage, or they don't even know where they're going till after the event or leaving school. Even then, they have to try different things and then find out later this is the area that they feel they would really like to develop. And some people just go through the process because that's all they know is safety for them, and so they do that. But how do we catch them in the during the school system? Because really, from the ages 11 to 15 or before 11 to 15, then, we need to do something. And this is what I'm trying to. So really, what I want to do, because what I wanted is, I really enjoy what you're saying. I want you to give me 5 practical solutions to help with people getting into the industry. I love the apprenticeship. I love the idea of golden apprenticeship. And I think this is, I never knew that you went through apprenticeship, and I love the idea, because it's something that the education system needs to incorporate or integrate within that system to show the different what is available to young people, so that they don't lose them and they don't miss out on opportunities that could have been had at an early stage. I also love the trade school thing as well, because I think if you can have practical, because not everyone is how do you say, I love the theory of just going through the education system. They like to be hands-on, as your Dexter is, for example. And I think it's the education system has to change. So what I want you to do, very quickly, because I'm very aware of the time, is that 5 practical solutions to help with young people going through the education system. What sort of things can the education, how do we make the education system much better? How to encourage more young people into your industry, but also how do we develop bring about a pool of getting the skill sets ready for any problems that may occur? Because if you think about it, for example, the climate change issue, we've talked, we knew about it, and then we are reacting to the situation. So what can we be proactive rather than be reactive to how we do things, especially in this country? Because every country is different, every continent is different in their approach. I know Germany is slightly different in the way they approach these, but I heard that Turkey is similar to what Germany do in sense of the education system. How can we enable our education system? How can we also get the media involved to change how we do things? Just your perspective again. I don't want you to try and overanalyze the question. I just want you to give me your authentic view.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So the first thing is, as a 10-year, 11-year-old, is learning to enjoy and when you play. So is it playing on a broad field, football, sport, games, putting construction kits together, nursing, are you compassionate? All these different aspects of human life, as mummy and daddy, you need to be able to discern in your child. And the younger you discern it, I mean, so for example, I'm not a natural carer. My wife is. And I could tell when I met Maureen, when she was 19, that her compassion was at the forefront. Not all people are like that, but she is. And there are others like that. You can, and so if you are going to be a nurse, or if you, it's no good being, because that's another vocation. You can't teach at university compassion. And that's the key skill of someone who is a nurse. The key skill is compassion, and it's there as a young child. And you can't teach it. You can learn aspects of it, but you can't actually teach it. So what I'm saying is, for the first 3 or 4 years, for 10 to 15, learn to play, learn to across a broad section, learn to make things, learn to draw, learn to dream about what you might be in bubbles, maybe. Mummy and daddy, meanwhile, need to have an eye on what you're doing in terms of basic education. So try and get your focus by the time you're 15 on the core subjects, maths, English, science, biology, history, geography. By that time, 15, 16, you need to be have that aspect to who you are. So it is a matter of looking at what's happening now in Ukraine and saying, how have I learned by history? Balance. And so then by the time you're 16, 17 and A-levels, you're beginning to hone in slightly on, I'm not so interested in geography, history. I'm more interested in physics, chemistry, science. What is your significant interest? That's the next thing. What actually lights your fire? Because by the time you're 17, 18, you should begin to, as a girl or boy, I think you should. And so you need, again, the key thing is, what are you doing with sport? What are you doing with your spare time? What do you read? You know, I've had, how many times have I turned around in my training? Because I'm also a Christian minister. And the key thing one day was, what do you read? You know, what do you keep a diary, a journal in life? But that's later on in life. But, you know, so there's all these things that bring you to make you a rounded human being. And if mummy and daddy don't help you, then you really have got a hard job because you've got to make your own life. And then later on, your higher level education can maybe take place, and you don't have to get 15,000, 20,000 pound in debt because you've got this basic. You have a company interested in you. You have a profession that, with some company, hopefully, that will take you on and pay for your training. I think too, another key thing is, what's the key thing that make me special compared to the next person? 25, 30 years old. What's the niche that I can fulfill nobody else can? And that's what I found. I found an industry that is a very niche industry that has extremely high professional standards, that continually reinvests in you a little bit later on. How's that?
That's good. Was that 5?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't count.
but you know what? Look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be 5. But I think what you did say, and I think it's very, very important, is getting young people, as I said, up to a certain age, be able to explore different opportunities.
Yes, as wide a base as possible.
Yeah, as hopefully they have that the home environment enables them to do that, because not every home is a perfect or ideal home, but hopefully that gives them they have the encouragement, and the pressure of life is not affecting, because you know, I think in your time, I'm not saying I'm not being ageist here, is that I think it's slightly maybe easier and much more, you have more of a education, whereas now young people are now we now talk about mental health, we now talk about issues, the drivers are so different, and you know, not everyone is hearing them as well. And I think, you know, we've been brought up in a different way. This world now is so totally different from, I don't know, 10 years ago, or even 50 years ago. And so there's so many other dynamics, and there's so many other things that forms this young person. And we just want to be able to give them the best opportunity, especially where STEM is concerned. But you know, Neville, I'm so grateful because you're so passionate. That's why you brought it. I'm just really excited about it. I mean, you know, and you know what I love so much about what you've done is that the fact that your grandsons, Dexter especially, has come to you, and even your the other son is a grandson is saying, I want to be like you, because he's going to Romania. That's because of you. And it shows how the impact you have, and it shows how the impact we as individuals have on each other,
Yes.
the influences
Yeah.
we have, and that if we can broaden that influence as to what young people are
Yes.
exposed
I mean,
to, it will change the way they
yes.
see things and how
Yes.
they approach life
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. I mean, one thing, for example, is that might be affecting Dexter is I took him and his dad, my son Tom, to the Second World War battlefields just before COVID. Now that's a privilege, but when he would have been 12. So he's seen the Second World War battlefields and what they did and what passion these people had.
Yeah.
And he's begun to understand it. Because you see, in France, the museums are teaching museums.
So how do we bring tasters to the young people? Because I think this needs to be done.
That's a taste, you see.
Yeah, I know. And I think that, young people, not every young person is privy to that opportunity. They're not many people exposed to that. So how do we make it not just to select few? Because I say a select few are given, maybe it depends on your school, type of school you go to as well.
Yes,
because you have people who, but there's going to be schools that that's not even their priority at all. So unless you give me a taste of something, I won't be able to visualize how I can relate to it. And
that's why I'm saying, as a 10 to 15-year-old, you need to. It's like you need to be like blotting paper and absorb everything. Do as many different things. Doesn't matter whether you're half interested or not. Experience it, and then something will crop up.
Trigger, Well, thank you, Neville. I mean, we can talk all day.
We can. But I shall fly my Spitfire.
I think it's indeed. But I really do hope you still come back to the STEM world and start as an ambassador and do things, because I seriously, it's the first time I actually sat down with you. We've actually had a conversation where your passion is just usually through the screen. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I've never really, because normally you're very straight-faced, but you're this is the passion. And I think we need that again back in the schools to encourage more young people to see what it's like and give them tasters of what it's all about, so that they can help, and also parents as well, or guardians, or whoever. So anyway,
so you're welcome, and I've enjoyed it.
Thank you, and I hope I hope this was a platform that would again showcase what you're trying to do. And I think Dexter, telling Dexter's very famous now. He's a guy he's famous than his grandfather now. So he's the one we're going to be talking about. But really, I really, do you know something? I've learned so much from you today, and the passion and that you've brought across today. And I know people will hate when we get a podcast out there. We really learn so much from you, because I've learned a lot, and all I need to do is just sit down and hear you. And you bring in your Spitfire and how you brought it together, going back, revisiting the old hobbies and the passion, shows that you never stop learning.
No. Absolutely. Life is a whole journey to learn.
Well, it is. It's evolving all the time. We're evolving all the time.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that this also trigger off the industry, the government, to start seeing things in a different way. You talk about golden apprenticeship. You're the second person who's shown so much passion, the need for apprenticeship, but not just any type of apprenticeship, but one that changes the person who goes into it. And this golden apprenticeship made a huge difference in your life. That this is look at you today. So I'm hoping that will be more of that, and the education system will buy it. Yes.
You're welcome.
Anyway, thank you. I know we've talked enough, more than enough.
Yeah.
Have a good day.